I want to make sure I can produce the highest quality content possible. And I want to make sure that you leave here with plenty of content to promote yourself with. You're just trying to stack the value. Not only am I a good interviewer, this is going to go up on YouTube. We do keywords on YouTube. We do 2 shorts on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's a pretty good value stack. Would $100 a month help? Technically, then you've monetized your podcast. If you have more than 1 guest a week, that's a good place to start. But if you're a show that isn't doing video right now, this might be a good opportunity to test that. Obviously, test it a few times with yourself and or friends and or free guests first. You can do certain videos in Canva, Adobe Premiere. Honestly, there's really not as much of a learning curve as I thought. Once you figure it out, you can get pretty efficient. But the thought is you'd want to create some like really nice content. That's for you to decide behind the scenes. Who am I to tell you what to do? Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all of the time. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. Episode number 138, is podcasting really too saturated for you to succeed? The truth is it's not. It might just seem like it. Today, for episode number 139, a popular way to monetize right now. So I'm going to start off by saying this strategy isn't for everyone. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's not for you. I have had, I won't say many, several clients do this. I have had many clients think about this, and it just isn't aligned for certain clients. So what is the popular way to monetize right now? You literally have your guests pay to come on your show. Now, I know what you're maybe thinking. Maybe you're saying, 1, my show's not big enough. 2, the types of guests I want to have on would never pay. 3, how do I even do that? Great questions. So obviously this is not going to work with like a reach guest. If you're reaching out to someone who, let's say, is like a B-level guest from your perspective, this is somebody you'd really like to have on and they have demand, they're probably not going to come to pay. They're not going to pay to come on your show, especially if you don't have a big audience. So we'll get that right out of the way. That's not who this is going to work for. This is most likely going to work for somebody who is on Podmatch or is on Matchmaker, and is most likely going to be somebody that reaches out to you. Now, the challenging part of this is, well, if you don't have a ton of listens, what can you do to build enough credibility where it actually makes sense for them to do this? And what I think is the best way is to just do kind of like a value stack. So what does that mean? Something along the lines of, we have 2 different guests. We'll just say we have 2 different guest packages. One is free, and the other one is X amount of dollars. So right now I have a client who does $97 per guest. And what that package would look like is, let's say you get a keyword-specific blog on our website. You get 2 high-quality pieces of social media content to share with your audience. You get an email out to our audience, and you get something else. But we have to make sure the content is really good if you're doing it that way. So essentially, the way that you're doing it is you're saying, what I lack in potential audience, I can make up for in other ways. And it's just up to you to figure out what those ways are, depending on what your skill set is. I've had clients do this who are really good at video editing, so they would just make really good social media content. That's something that people might want. Here's the kind of the thought. If somebody reaches out to you, that is a suggestion that you have a little bit of demand. Maybe you're kind of in the driver's seat. If they don't have a podcast, they might be struggling with content creation. So one of the reasons they're going on podcasts is because it's an easy way for them to potentially get people to see their content and talk about their book or talk about their message. And most hosts are going to create content, tag them in it, and then they can share it on their social media. It isn't the worst idea in the world to say, if you're a guest on my podcast, you're going to get this, you're going to get this. It's going up on YouTube. I'm going to make 2 shorts for social media. I'm going to make 2 shorts for YouTube. This, and this. If you're already... Now, again, this is where it's like an ethical and moral thing. If you're already doing that, it's probably not super aligned just to start charging certain people for it. So I would suggest you alter the package in some way to make it more valuable, right? I don't really think it's going to be aligned to just give everybody the same thing and then only charge certain people. But if you're a show that isn't doing video right now, this might be a good opportunity to test that. Obviously, test it a few times with yourself and or friends and or free guests first, because the last thing you want is somebody to pay and then to lose the recording. That's a whole thing. But that's a potential thought. The other thought is if you're only creating like audiograms for guests, this might be a good way for you to practice creating social media content, whether that's through like an Opus clip, or I know Riverside has its thing. I know StreamYard has its thing now. You can do these depending. You can do certain videos in Canva. I use Adobe Premiere, but there's really not as much of a learning curve as I thought. Like once you figure it out, you can get pretty efficient. But the thought is you'd want to create some like really nice content, then share and tag them in it and that type of stuff. This is a really popular way to monetize right now because there are far more podcast guests than there are podcasts. So that means if you're getting reached out to all the time, you never know. There might be an opportunity here. And the thought is you want to essentially say it costs X amount of dollars to produce an episode of the show. I want to make sure I can produce the highest quality content possible. And I want to make sure that you leave here with plenty of content to promote yourself with. So really what you're just trying to stack the value. This is the value of being on the show. Not only am I a good interviewer, and this is going to go up on YouTube, and we do keywords on YouTube, and we do 2 shorts on YouTube, and 2 shorts on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, right? Like, it's a pretty good value stack. Now, are other shows doing the same thing for free? Maybe. So it's going to be up to you to convey that message and figure out how valuable it actually is. But this is a feasible way to monetize your podcast. What I will say is, 1, obviously it's dependent on people reaching out to you for the most part. 2, there are certain people who just will never do it. I'm not interested in paying to be on somebody's show just because we've had a lot of guests and it's cost me a lot of money to do production, and I just never wanted to pass that on to the guest. That was just never our business model. No judgment if that's the way you want to do it. It's just not for me. So it's just, there's going to be a subset of people who just say, hey, that's not for me. Another downside, there will be some people who think you're sleazy for doing it. So you might want to put it right in your Podmatch or Matchmaker bio. And now there's a reason they have, I know it's on Matchmaker where it says this host may charge a fee. I think Podmatch might have it too, but there's a reason they're putting that in there because that is becoming a pretty low barrier to entry way to monetize. Again, it doesn't have to be $97. It could be $27. It could be $25. It could be $15. I mean, you can test it out and see what happens. I'm not saying you're going to make life-changing money, but would $100 a month help? I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, technically then you've monetized your podcast. If you have more than 1 guest a week, maybe, it's $97 per person. We have 2 guests per week. Awesome. We're making $800 a month. I mean, that's a good place to start. So it's very specific. It's very niched. It's very dependent, but I have clients doing this right now. We have a client who does $97 per person and he has 30 guests on per month. So he's making $3,000 a month from the podcast. Now he has like a team and a lot of other stuff going on. So he's spending a good amount of that money, but that's his short-term strategy while he builds out other pieces of the business. So I think it's something worth testing. I think it's something worth experimenting with. Here's the other thing I would say, and please do not villainize me for saying this. I think this works really well with a certain type of host. You got to be good at sales, and you have to be really good at interviewing. You got to be pretty good at content creation. Like, you're somebody who's pretty confident if you're doing this. I never would have been able to do this in the beginning. So if you're at this point saying, I don't think this is for me, no worries. Completely understand. no need to listen to the rest of the episode if you don't think it'll be valuable. Like, I completely understand. But I do know a lot of people have asked me about this. So again, this isn't my way of doing it. I don't really recommend this to a lot of people because I think there's just, I won't even say easier ways, but there are other ways to monetize at the same level, right? It's like, okay, cool. Let's do this. Let's say you have a podcast and you're a coach or you're a service provider or whatever, and you charge $100 an hour. I feel like it would be easier just to get one paying client from the podcast that you work with every week, as opposed to sending the message to the guest, figuring out what the value stack is, making sure you're creating content, then doing the keywords and doing that and doing this and doing the blog and all that stuff. If you're already going to do that, like that's the place you want to get to, this is a good way to try to get there. So that's a thought. But yeah, I don't think this is the best long-term strategy because you just either run out of time or it eventually gets to the place where it's beyond somebody's budget. I can't imagine somebody's going to pay $500 to come on a show that has 1,000 listens a month, right? It just doesn't make sense. If you had 100,000 a month, you could probably charge 5,000. Different. But I think it might be a good way to get your foot in the door from a monetization standpoint. So yeah, that's my thought. The other thing that you could probably do, I've had clients do this, but again, there's a cap to this. If you do, let's say you do a pre-call with a guest, what you could do is you could say, hey, Kev, do you have any products or services that you're going to be talking about on your episode? Because what I could do is I could promote them for the next month after your episode drops, if I can get 15% of anything I sell. Like, that's just an affiliate exchange. You could definitely do that, and it might be easier to do it with guests. That's a thought. So maybe you don't have a product or a service yet. Let's say you have me on, and I have I have a journal. We actually do have a journal. So let's say that's what we're going to do. And we come to an agreement that I want you to actually use the journal and make sure it's valuable to you. If it's not, I don't want you to promote it. But let's say you use it and you find value in it. Sure, I'll give you 15% of anything that you sell, or 25%, whatever it is, whatever the number that you and the person come up with. That is another potential way. Because I think the barrier to entry, another thing that it just seems to be a season of this. Another thing I'm doing with a lot of clients is we're putting together pitch decks for sponsorships, because that's the place that they want to go. That's the direction they want to go. Well, one of the easiest ways to get an affiliate type sponsorship is just to do it with a guest. You already are talking to them. They're on your show, so you have some level of relationship. You're kind of in control of it because you can say it when you want. It's more, as opposed to saying you have to mention our product or service in every episode, it's more, I was actually using this product and it's actually pretty good and super beneficial. Not only do I think it would be good for you if you're watching or listening, but I think it would also help me too, because I'm going to get a kickback. So if you do find value in this show and it's something you really want to help and you want to help see me grow, this would be a really big step in doing that. So not only does it benefit the audience, it also benefits you.
If there's one thing that I find super valuable is his expertise on how to position the podcast to the right audience and fit the content into the overall business plan. And frankly, when we work together, he challenges me a lot. There were some tough conversations that he initiated with me so that I can really grow in the business. Besides the coaching part, the editing team does amazing work with editing and show notes and staying on top of all communications. Overall, my experience working with Kevin has really been top-notch.
And this is up to you. I can't tell you what to do behind the scenes, but I would suggest you do it ethically. Don't just say you love the product if you don't. Don't just say you enjoyed the interview with the guests and talk them up if they're not a good person. Again, that's for you to decide behind the scenes. Who am I to tell you what to do? I just don't think it'll work because I think the audience will see right through it. But that's another way that, again, I'm talking low barrier to entry ways rather than, having to build a website and get a physical product or a digital product or muster up the confidence for coaching or whatever it is, reaching out to a big brand to get sponsorships or have them run ads. These are ways that are kind of already in your control. Now, if you have a solo episode, if you have a solo podcast, not going to work. Obviously, it's a little bit different. But I have found that most people have some level of guest interviews. I know I'm kind of doing it a little bit weird. With NLU, we don't do interviews. With PGU, I did one with Evan, but Evan's a buddy, and I was going to Toronto, and it just made sense. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't really know what's going to happen. But outside of that, obviously there's regular affiliates. So if you use, I don't have anything I can just grab, but if you use HelloFresh, Factor, one of those type of meal services, you could reach out to them, say, hey, I love using this. I've been using it for X amount of time. Do you guys offer an affiliate program? If you just Google a company that you like, an affiliate program, it'll probably come up. I was going to do that with Audio-Technica. So I have Audio-Technica headphones, Audio-Technica mic. They don't do that. But I was literally going to do that because this is literally the stuff I recommend. Might as well get a kickback for it. Again, that's not my main monetization strategy, but that's something they actually don't do, which cool, no worries. But there's probably a company that you value that does some sort of affiliate program. So it might be worth looking into it. Where was I looking? Oh, I was looking at, I use an app called Macro Factor to track my macros. That has an affiliate program. So if you're a health and fitness podcast, nutrition, exercise podcast, boom, you're off to the races with that. Obviously, Amazon has its own affiliate thing. So if you're talking about, let's say you have a podcast about cameras and you're talking about cameras and lenses and tripods, you could create your own little Amazon affiliate thing. A lot of legalities with that, a lot of hoops you got to jump through. So those are a couple ideas, but I guess of course, we're right at the 20-minute mark almost. I guess the important thing that I want to get across in this episode is the guest charging the guests is a good way if you don't have that many listens, but you're able to create another level of value. Essentially, you don't have that much listener demand, but you have guest demand. Right? Because the name of the game at the end of the day is to get demand, create demand. That's really what we're trying to do, because demand creates opportunities. Demand creates interest. Demand creates conversion, right? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for demand. But in the meantime of building demand, there are some gentle, light ways to make a little bit of extra money. And that's essentially what we're talking about here today. Now, if you have guests on and they're paying you, it might not be a gentle, easy way. It might take a lot of work. It might not be worth it. So I think that's up to you to decide. But I do think a level of sales helps a lot. We just started working with a new client who is going to do this. He's going to try to get 8 guests per month, and he's going to try to charge, and we're going to help him create some next level content. So in that, it kind of makes sense, right? But he has to make X amount of dollars to recoup the money that he's paying us. So it has to be a sustainable business model. It has to run the right way. But that's up to you to test and see. It might not be for you, but if you're somebody who loves interviewing people and you have a lot of people reaching out and you're good at interviewing, you never know. Would another podcaster pay? Probably not, but maybe an author, maybe a coach, maybe somebody who doesn't have their own platform. They don't have a podcast. They don't have a YouTube channel. They're not really big on social. Like, they post, but they're not great content creators. I mean, if you think about it, you're going to get a 1-hour interview. You're going to get X amount of pieces of content. You're going to get keywords on YouTube. You're going to get a blog. You're going to get this. That might be worth $100 to someone. I mean, how much would it cost if you were to find somebody on Upwork or Fiverr to do that for you. It's probably going to cost like $100. So yeah, I would test it if it's something that feels aligned to you. If not, throw in the garbage. It might not be the way for you, but it's popular based on what I'm hearing and based on what a lot of clients are asking and or testing. And if Podmatch and Matchmaker are putting things within the profile that says there may be a fee connected to the show, that means there's a level of, it's crossed the threshold where they have heard that enough times where they say this is something that's going to stick around. So something worth testing. All right, cool. If my energy was off at all today, it's because I got a new MacBook and I went from Windows to Mac. And this is my first time recording natively to the laptop through the camera, and it's a whole thing. So I'm just a little nervous that none of this is going to get recorded. So if I seem off at all, that is why. All right, cool. As always, if you are feeling stuck when it comes to monetization, if you feel like you want the truth about what it's actually going to take, albeit it might not be the most positive truth, but you really want the truth, like, Kev, is this something I can actually do? I will be very, very honest with you. Gentle and lovingly, of course. I'm not here to wreck anybody's dreams, but I want to make sure you have accurate expectations. I'll have my link in the show notes for a free podcast breakthrough session. I did a session a couple of weeks ago with Tim. Shout out to Tim. Has a podcast and a big Facebook group and doing a lot of really, really good stuff. A great opportunity and a pleasure to meet you, my friend. So I'll have the link in the show notes for that. Also, if you are interested in group coaching, the next round of group coaching is going to start in, I think, like a month. So we're looking at the middle of March. So Next Level You, the group coaching used to be holistic self-improvement. We talk about life, love, health, and wealth. Right? Every session would be dedicated to, this is a relationship session, this is a finance session, all that stuff. Since there was demand, we started going in a different direction, where it's now set up as level up yourself, level up your podcast, level up your business. So the first two sessions, we talk about everything that we talked about in the original group coaching. The second two sessions, I coach on podcasting. So very specific Canva presentations, stats, all that stuff. And then the last two sessions are business, and Alan runs those. So we essentially say that by the end of it, you'll know how to grow, scale, and monetize your podcast. If that's the goal, because we'll bring the ideas and different stuff for how to make money. What does that look like? What does it look like behind the scenes of a podcast that is running and scalable and monetized and all that stuff? So if that's something you're interested in, we can have the link in the show notes for that. It's on the Next Level Universe website under group coaching. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out. All right, cool. What do I wish for you this week? Man, I hope you feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to monetization. I know that's like the hard thing, and it makes sense because that's the thing that everybody's kind of after. Test out different stuff and see what works for you. I know I always talk about coaching and products and services, and again, I'm convinced that's for an indie podcast that may never get to more than 10,000 downloads or 10,000 listens a month. I think that's the best way to do it. This is a good thought process. We have clients on YouTube that I think they're getting like 275,000 views per month, and they're making like $2,000 a month from that. Now, I'm not saying $2,000 a month is not a lot of money. I'm saying for most of us, it's not enough to live off of. And they're also doing 3 videos a week, and there's keyword search, the thumbnails, we're split testing. I mean, there's like a lot of stuff that goes into that. And even for them, I keep telling them, we have to cut costs and we have to find a way to make more money with memberships, with that type of stuff. The ad money is great. I consider that like an extra for them. There's a lot of other stuff that they could be doing. So I just say that as kind of taking people behind the scenes of, yeah, I mean, they're getting 200, 300,000 views per month, and they're making $2,000 to $2,500. there probably should be other types of monetization, other revenue streams, just to make it more sustainable. Because what happens if you have a down month? You kind of lose all your money. We don't want that. I don't want that for you. I want you to have some level of safety, some level of certainty, and a good level of predictability when it comes to monetization. So I don't know why. Oh, I hope for you that you have some light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to monetization. And my goal with sharing that is it'll help create more accurate expectations. Again, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. I do not. That is not ever, ever, ever my goal. I've just seen too many freaking ads of, well, we'll help you launch your show and you'll be a top 100 podcast and your podcast should be your top performing salesperson and this and this and this and this. Yes, it can help you for sure. And yes, you can get clients and you can make money from a podcast. I just don't want anybody to think it's way easier than it is, because then you're going to think you're messing up when you're just doing the things that you got to do. So I hope it seems like there is a way for you, because I think belief is half the battle. All right. Until next week, keep on crushing it. Please, please, please keep on podcasting. And I will talk to you all then.